I'm Kristen, and this is the Explorer in You podcast. Now, what I've discovered after visiting 5 continents and some amazing places is that the greatest thing standing in your way of seeing the world is what you believe is possible. I believe that travel is for everyone, on any budget, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. So this podcast is all about unlocking the explorer in you. You'll hear stories from people who will inspire you to set big travel goals and show you how to achieve them. Let's explore. Have you ever fantasized about quitting your job, selling everything you own, and traveling around the world? Well, that's exactly what Hina and Jason did. My guests today set off on their year abroad, but 133 days into their journey, COVID-19 hit. Now, they were in Colombia, and they've been there ever since. This hasn't stopped them from continuing to create great content for Confusion of Cultures, their blog that's dedicated to culture-inspired travel. As you'll hear today, their passion for celebrating and capturing what it's like to be immersed in other cultures really shines through. On today's show, they share some of their best advice and tips for enjoying local culture and how to be a responsible traveler. They also talk about the negatives and the positives of being on lockdown in a foreign country. Now, I just love their blog because they really care about supporting local communities. This was my first time interviewing 2 people. They're one of the loveliest couples, and I loved my chat with them. I know you will too. Enjoy. Hi, Hina and Jason. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having us. Super excited to be here.
So I thought we would start with you sharing a little about how Confusion of Culture started, your journey as travel bloggers so far.
Sure. Well, we've been...
Where do we start?
Where do you start? Well, we've been together for 13 years now, and we share the same passion, traveling and exploring places. And initially, during our travels, we really focused on, visiting the most amazing places, taking photos of the must-visit sites, and the focus was really sort of being tourists in a way. I just remember our first sort of trip together. It was to Luxor, wasn't in Egypt, and we were absolutely blown away by the history there and the landscapes. Having said that, we still sort of focus a lot on let's take amazing photos, make sure we've got Karnak Temple in, and eating, drinking. But it was, I would say, over a number of years when we started traveling elsewhere that we sort of, there was an organic shift into let's take a step back, let's slow down, and let's really see what's going on in the cities and these places that we're visiting. So we really started enjoying people watching a bit more. We love sitting in cafes in Paris and watching the world go by. I remember that beautiful afternoon we had on Galata Bridge where we just enjoyed looking at just fishermen getting on with their day and having a banter.
Istanbul, wasn't it, that one?
Istanbul, yes. Yeah. And I think those kind of experiences really enabled us to get a better understanding of what local cultures and in the life, people's life were.
Yeah, I guess it almost naturally then pushed us into being slightly different travelers. So as you're sitting there kind of watching people get on with their lives, you naturally start to wonder a bit more about what are they up to, where they're going, what are their traditions, their habits, their cultures generally. And I think then that kind of pushed us into thinking, well, maybe we want to actually experience these places a bit more than just pass through and visit and take a list of photos.
Right.
So then I guess if you add that with our own personal family histories as well, we've got quite a mixture of cultures going on around our close and extended family. So I've got my mum's white English, my dad's from Mauritius. I've got extended family members from all over the world, Europe, Asia, and Africa. So it's kind of made for some interesting and quite fun parties over the years.
It's his family's like United Nations. And it's fantastic.
Oh, that's fun.
And I come from India, and I moved to the UK nearly 2 decades ago. So I had an incredible experience of just adapting and learning a new culture altogether.
I guess going back to where Confusion of Cultures came from, is basically we were I don't really tell this story much. I have to try and remember, but I think we were having dinner with
your nans, wasn't
my
it?
nan, was it? Yeah, with a small part of this rather diverse family that we had. So British, Indian, French, Italian, I think, and there's only 6 people in the room. So we're just talking generally about how much we love this kind of mixture of cultures in our own family, but mainly how important it is and how positive it is for the world to have these kind of different cultures going on and working together. So naturally, after a few glasses of wine, which is tend to where we kind of make most of our life choices,
Right.
we got more and
The
more
best
creative.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we got more and more creative, and I think it was my nan, actually, my grandmother, that come up with the phrase of, well, I don't think she invented it, but she came up for us and she said, well, you've got such a confusion of cultures going on in your lives, you know, and then that's exactly where it stuck. Essentially, I guess confusion of cultures is a celebration of the world's cultures, the mixture of cultures, and how they all work and blend together to make the world much more interesting, much more colourful, and much more an awesome place to kind of explore, I guess.
Leave it to the probably wisest person in the room, you know, your grandmother, to come up with the name.
I know it helps that she's a writer as well, so she's quite creative.
Oh, lovely.
You should really credit her, haven't we? We haven't been credited her for the...
Yeah, you got to shout out grandma, because it's a big deal. You know, I've read your blogs, and obviously I follow you on Instagram, and you are able to really capture being immersed in the cultures. And I think that's why I like your writing so much, and always I'm excited for a new post, because it really feels like you're giving us that authentic experience from that little like peek behind the curtain, kind of like, this is a day-to-day moment, as opposed to like the bigger, like, oh, I'm in front of the Eiffel Tower, and you know what we can typically get probably anywhere, right? With the more popular experiences. So really appreciated that about your blog. So was there a specific moment when you both knew that you wanted to leave your 9 to 5 and like travel the world for a year? And what did that moment look like?
I guess, it's probably been a series of moments over the past few years. I mean, everyone talks about it, I think, generally, and thinks about it. So it's kind of built up a bit over the years. I think because where we lived in the UK, in London before traveling, the society you live in there is generally you're expected to work really hard and only really have time off for a year. Actually, you know, let your hair down, explore and enjoy yourself. And I guess we've always questioned why does it have to be that way around? Shouldn't we live our lives and enjoy our lives as much as we can? And maybe, we have to earn, because you have to earn money to spend money to be able to travel. But if you don't expect to spend loads of money when you're traveling, you don't necessarily have to earn as much in life. So we decided a few years back that we just want to take a year out and sort of try this lifestyle. So a year out for us, you know, career break, sabbatical, gap year, whatever you want to call it. But we always thought, well, why should that kind of extended travel experience be just for when you're in those kind of student gap year age brackets? You know, it's something we've written about recently. It's not just for those kind of people, it's for everyone. You know, if you want to and you can afford to, then great. So we were initially going to just take that 1 year out in 2021. We got all excited with, you know, the planning of where in the world should we go? How much is this going to cost? What do we want to see, do, and experience? And then naturally being fairly, I guess, slightly impatient, maybe, we thought, well, why wait until 2021? So again, after a glass of wine or two, we thought, well, let's just do it next year. Let's do it in 2020. And that's kind of been an interesting decision for other reasons.
We're kicking ourselves. Why the hell did we bring it forward? We could have just stayed with 2021. But although sort of coronavirus has, you know, put a halt on our travels, it's given us an opportunity to reflect on the 4 months of travel we've had. And I think it sort of reconfirmed our decision in a way that we prefer this. We don't want to go back to doing 9 to 5 job. The thought of getting on London Underground every day, it's very off-putting. So I think, like you said, it was never that specific sort of a moment. It was like so many years of discussions, and then I think travel this year that sort of is confirmed.
Yeah.
People want to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You kind of put an actual deadline on it, and that probably helped like make it happen. Yeah.
One of our blogs is called Comfort Blankets, and without kind of spoiling it too much, essentially it's about what stops people from making these kind of decisions in life and choices in life to think, well, actually, this is what I want to do. What's stopping me from doing it? And that is one of the first things that we kind of look at and explore. I think it's like, well, if you want to do it, when are you going to do it? And then work backwards to how are you going to do it?
Right. Yeah, I actually read that blog, and I'll link it in the show notes. That way people can go and read it too, because it was really helpful in breaking down the steps of what does that look like? Because that's such a big dream, I think, to accomplish. I'm going to go travel the world for a year. But what was nice in your blog was it's like, oh, here's the actual steps of what I have to do.
Yeah, just our thought process, which is, I guess, what we try to do. And a lot of our writing is just share our thoughts, really.
So I know that you did start your journey to travel for a year abroad, and then COVID hit a couple 100 days into it. And then, so what's it been like on lockdown in a foreign country?
It's been an interesting, I would put it as a roller coaster ride of highs and lows. It's, what is 6 hours difference between here and the UK, and then 10.5 hours between here and India. So I don't know, unless I want to wake up my family and friends at wee hours in the morning, it's quite difficult to just pick up the phone and call them, chat.
And I guess also like having a glass of wine at 11 in the morning, our time isn't usually a good idea.
Yes.
So socializing generally is quite tricky, and that's, I think, been quite important for most people, maintaining those relationships.
Yeah. So when you're trying to connect with people who are time zones away, it sounds like it's pretty challenging.
Yeah, it's been a bit tricky. And also it's been frustrating that we've not been able to really explore this city, Medellin, because it was one of the cities that I particularly wanted to spend more time in. And only I had to imagine I'll be spending 4 months just moving flats around just to get a bit of change. So that has been a little bit frustrating. But yeah, the strict lockdown here, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think because like the whole point of a lockdown is to create distance between yourself and the virus, right? But I think when the reality is, it removes you from the reality of what it can actually do to people and is doing to people around the world. So from experience, losing people to the virus is when it can really kind of hit home about actually this is what it does. And I think it's during those times that we've found that it's really important just to talk to each other about our anxieties, our feelings, concerns, and ultimately that's helped bring us closer than ever before, I guess. But also it's just really good for your mental health just to talk about these things. I guess the flip side to all that, though, is, as with most people, we're kind of learning new skills. There is a positive to having too much or some time on your hands that you didn't have before.
I started a podcast.
Yeah, yeah, it seems like working out quite well for you. So we're writing a lot, obviously, but and I guess most of the world is in the same place. We're cooking a lot more, variety of food.
So you guys are in Colombia, in Medellin. Does it look like there in terms of the lockdown?
So I guess in the early days, we thought they were quite well organised in that it was quite clear when you can go out, when you can't go out. But generally, I think other than those kind of physical restrictions, everyone that we walk past in the street just seems to be quite happy and friendly still. I think initially, when people were getting used to wearing their masks, you have to do here out and about, everyone was a bit concerned and a bit, I guess, anxious about engaging with and saying hello and even making eye contact with people wearing masks.
So it sounds like it's kind of similar to here. People are just adjusting to wearing masks being normal and being distant from people being the new normal.
Yeah.
I think we chose to, we made a choice to stay here because at the time we realised it started getting a bit, this is actually quite serious, this COVID thing. We had to make a choice as to whether we jump on a flight back to the UK, or that we stay out in Colombia or anywhere else in the world, I guess. And what part of Colombia do we go for? So we were going to be heading here to Medellin anyway. So we just figured, well, let's weigh it all up here. We haven't actually got a job to go back to in the UK, because we left that for the year. The UK is generally quite colder and a bit more miserable in early March when this was. It's cheaper to live here. It's generally a lot warmer and sunnier, and everyone's happier. So we thought, well, not knowing how long this is going to go on for, let's stay in this part of the world and see what happens.
Sounds like a good call. Your travel blog, it's focused on traveling in a way that really appreciates and celebrates different cultures. And you talked a little bit about why that's important to you, but maybe if you can expand on that a little bit more, why that's so important to both of you.
So naturally we're from two different cultures ourselves. We've learned a lot about each other's backgrounds and cultures over the years, and I think that personal experience has then led us to want to experience culture in its own way across the world, but also to share and encourage other people to learn and experience those same things. Writing is one way of doing it. Using social media is a brilliant way of doing it as well. So ultimately, we want to try and do, I guess, if you wanted to try and, in a quick list, is raise awareness of what culture is, and how different cultures work quite well together across the world. We want to share positive experiences of cultures blending and working and mixing together around the world. It happens fantastically in London, as an example. But it also happens very well in Mexico as a whole. There's so many different cultures that come together in one place. We want to encourage people to travel to new places, but quite specifically with a purpose to gain a better understanding of local culture. Not to necessarily though it is quite good to take just a list of photos. We take photos as well, they're important memories. But actually there's an opportunity there to get to know and understand what's going on locally. And I guess lastly, we really want to focus on using things like social media and our website to grow an international network, essentially where people who are like-minded and interested in culture can shout about their own experiences, their own cultures, their own travel and journeys and stories, to ultimately kind of get this, I guess, a snowball effect that people are actually more interested in the cultures in local places than they would have been before.
Right. Like creating this sort of like-minded community of people who are really interested in learning about other people, places, culture. And then so like most of us, you guys are currently in lockdown. And so I think our listeners would be really interested to know how to continue to learn about local culture. And so do you have any tips about how they can continue to have experiences when you're sort of limited geographically? I think you guys would be great to talk about this because you are about exploring locally, and that's what a lot of us will need to do right now because we can't go too far.
Sure. I mean, if I was to just say what we're doing, and then Jason, maybe you can talk about some tips and suggestions. So we're sort of trying to shop locally. We've got some avocado farmers, and we sort of go on a little bike every day, and we go and purchase the produce from them, just trying to get some interaction going. Buying a bit of street food. I mean, Colombian street food is amazing. It's like fried goodiness. So it's pretty good. And then also just like saying hello to people in the street when walking past, make some sort of good connections. People live in our block of flats as well because we've chosen to live in a local neighbourhood rather than hotel chain. So that sort of gives us an opportunity to meet other people who live here most of the time of the year, and just reading about other cultures, where we might head next. And I think making contact with other bloggers, that's been great, because the places that we're planning to go to, or were planning to go to, now we can't because of this ghastly disease, we're still learning about that culture. So when we do eventually go, we know enough about it. So that has been quite nice.
I guess that's how we've met you, Christina.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's been so amazing to reach out to and meet other travel bloggers, because I know for myself, just talking about travel is kind of filling that void. Other passionate travelers of not actually being able to go. And it's been great to form that like community with other people. And like you're saying, there are a lot of places that I haven't been. And so to sort of get that information now, it's like, okay, when the green light goes on, you'll be ready with all the information and to go.
Yeah, the internet is full of great information. I mean, there is some useless information out there as well, but generally, there are travel bloggers like ourselves who are all about just shouting about our experiences in the hope that we can encourage other people to sort of pick up that interest in what we're doing and maybe go and experience it for themselves. So I guess when it comes to what other people can do is keep reading, keep building those relationships with people on social media is quite important. Essentially, the word social in social media is an important thing to remember. Most of our experience has been quite positive, reaching out to other travel or culture bloggers and asking them more information about this place or your experience. They're more than happy usually to respond and give you an answer. But I think generally, and I think and this is something we're learning more and more as we travel, is that we need to remember that everywhere in the world has culture. Like the culture will vary completely, across the world, but just because you're at home in your local neighborhood doesn't mean that there is no culture to go and learn about. Like it's everywhere. You look around, you think about the habits that you've got yourself. Is that related to culture? Is it other people? Your neighbors may have their own habits, the food you're eating and the kind of music you're enjoying, the religions you might follow. It's all kind of quite possible to still learn and experience culture locally on your own doorstep. Through your neighbours, your local communities, your friends and family, which again is just all very good practice. Like you said, when that green light comes on and you can start moving around the world a bit more.
Yeah, and you guys just published a blog, I think it was about Mexico and how it's a melting pot. And, if you're lucky enough to live in sort of those culturally diverse areas, like I live in the Bay Area, it's very diverse. I totally agree with you that there are cultures right within 5 minutes of you that you can explore if you're lucky enough to live in a diverse area. So that's something to consider. Like you're saying, culture is kind of all around you. You just kind of have to look for it.
Yeah. And I guess, even your own culture is something you might not have been so aware of in the past that you could look a bit into. And, why do I do this? Is that because it's been a tradition in the family for years, or maybe this is because my grandparents were interested in teaching me this, or whatever it may be. People could look inward as well.
Right. Yeah, I love that. You can just learn more about. You can do like a 23andMe or an Ancestry.com. Learn all about your heritage.
Exactly.
You guys write about traveling responsibly. So what does that mean to you? And what are some ways that listeners can be responsible travelers?
Sure. I mean, over the number of years of our traveling, we sort of questioned ourselves, didn't we? As in, how can we travel with an intention of leaving or making some positive impact on the cultures and countries that we go to? So what we've done is we created a whole list of things, and we're including that as part of a travel tips page, where and you feel the listeners can go and explore, and if there are any specific sort of tips about that local area, then we've included that too. So we covered culture, economy, environment, all different sections in there, because it is really important to us. For example, culture-wise, just being aware of where you're going, reading about it, reading about the laws in that country. I think in itself will enable travelers to be a bit more respectful towards that culture. And I guess it will give you that confidence to learn a bit more about it, and immerse into it a bit more, I don't know, comfortably, rather than just arriving somewhere. Say, for example, if you go to Gujarat or Kerala in India, alcohol is prohibited there. So, you don't want to come across really in an awkward situation asking for alcohol and being told, oh, actually, no,
Yeah, let's do shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Might not go over very well.
Yes.
I guess that there's also, like, so if you look at the economy, the local economy, and ultimately you are there spending money. So it's just thinking about where your money ends up. Like, can you stay in accommodation that is owned and run by someone locally, or can you avoid staying in an international hotel chain that the money will just leave the country straight away as soon as it leaves your bank account? Can you buy local goods in shops? Again, try and avoid it in those kind of large chains. There are times when you can't avoid it, which is obviously completely understandable. But wherever possible, just thinking, where does this dollar or this pound end up at the end of the day?
What kind of impact is it having?
Yeah, I mean, things like using local guides, they, at the end of the day, they're from the local area. They have that knowledge that you won't necessarily get elsewhere. And they will then be benefited within their own local community because the money will stay there.
Right.
And one thing I kind of try to always remember as well is it's quite important just to think about when you're booking that holiday or that trip, whatever it may be, is to get travel insurance. I'm not going to try and sell you travel insurance right now, but essentially, if you can be less of a burden on local resources by having suitable insurance in place, if something goes wrong, then it's just good to plan that way. And it's something particularly aware of in Colombia with the healthcare system here being a bit stretched, and under-resourced.
Wow, that's actually, I would not have thought of that. That's a great point.
And just sort of environmentally, exploring places on foot. It's great for exercise, but also you get to see so much more than you would if you were just in a car driving around. Also trying to use public transport a bit more. I mean, we've been doing that.
Great.
Yeah, it's so entertaining as well.
Oh, I bet.
There's colourful, vibrant buses in Central America. It's fabulous. It's a whole culture.
It's
a party bus.
Yeah. And I mean, just doing things that you usually would do in terms of reducing carbon footprint that we do at home, just using or saying no to plastic bags, recycling wherever possible. And I think lodging wise, we've been quite mindful of that. We hadn't done that prior to our travels, but just trying to see if we can find eco-friendly lodging options. And again, there's a list of questions we've actually included in our travel tips page. I think, okay, but what does that mean? Because it's easy to say that, pick eco lodging option, but then what does that entail? So there's a bit more information on that for our readers.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes as well. That way readers can just pop on over and get that. So how do you think COVID-19 will impact the future of travel? And in general, do you see potential ways for us to travel differently?
I think there's two ways of looking at it. There's short-term and there's long-term travel that is going to be impacted in different ways. So I think over the next year, which is what I would say is short-term, people will probably be traveling less far. They won't want to sit on an aeroplane for 10 hours wearing a mask. So they're probably, again, it's just an assumption. I think that people will be more interested about staycations, as it's called. So traveling within your own country or going out and about and experiencing your own city, or maybe at a push continent. So traveling in and around Europe as an example. Longer term, I think that it will be open up a bit more. There'll be longer distance travel that people are more interested in doing. I'm not saying that everyone will be against long distance travel, but it will be a bit more of an interest for people over the longer term. So I think what it means is that, I mean, so many businesses in the world are reliant on income from tourism, which they are all struggling with at the moment because there are no tourists or travelers. So I think we can all be a bit mindful about that as to when we are traveling again, like we were just talking about, where and how can we spend our money to make sure that those businesses still exist in another 5 years time, so that other people can experience those places. But also, if people are choosing not to travel so far away, it doesn't mean you can't still, I guess, nurture local tourism in your own area, so that again people can still experience it in future. So things like, again, thinking about how you're spending money. If you are going to go and stay in a little cottage in the middle of England, for example, is it locally owned? Can you buy from the local farm, for example? Those businesses going. So again, it's just about thinking about the future as responsible travellers.
I think something we're considering as well, aren't we? So as soon as sort of inland transport reopens in Colombia, we would like to sort of explore a bit more outside Medellin. And I think that way you can still continue to travel and stimulate your brains. But yeah, we're hoping that's what people would do.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like a reversal. You know, everything kind of shut down, and then hopefully things will incrementally open back up. And someday we'll be able to go where we want.
Yeah, one day.
So what's next for both of you? I mean, you're in Colombia now, and do you know how long you'll be there, or do you have a sense of that?
The government has announced that they're going to reopen international flights on the 1st of September. We're planning to move to another flat just for change of scenery, so that's like the next step in the next 2 weeks. But yeah, I think till the 1st of September we're definitely going to be here, and as soon as the international flights are available for us to book, we're going to book the first flight out of this country somewhere in the Caribbean. Glorious sunshine by the sea on an island. Drinking rum.
Did you say somewhere in the Caribbean?
Yeah, that's what we're planning to head
nice
to. Yeah, hopefully they will allow us.
Amazing.
And a completely different culture altogether from where we've been in the past couple of months anyway.
So that's what we're hoping to do next.
Fingers crossed for you. That sounds lovely.
Excellent. Yes, no, we're really hopeful. And then just continue to write our culture-inspired travel tips and blogs and stories and experience that we've been doing, hoping to do that. And lastly, finding a way of making this kind of lifestyle a bit more permanent. So this year was about exploring and just experiencing different cultures. But now that we have, we actually quite like this lifestyle of full-time traveling. How can we make this more permanent?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Do you both write equally, or does one do more?
I think Hina writes more than I do.
Well, I think we have different things we want to write about. So also, Jason's been working a lot on our website, and I have literally no patience with website, and I'm not that tech savvy either. So I'm more into writing and taking photos.
I think it works quite well in that balance. So Hina's, I think, generally a lot more creative than I am, and I tend to provide that slightly more practical side of things. So like when we're writing our travel tips, I think Hina provides that kind of the meat on the bones, and I just give it the kind of, well, how can you get there?
Or maybe when I'm using the computer and it's not working, Jay says, just stop pressing buttons and give it to me and I'll show you what to do with it. So
just hand it over.
Don't throw it out of the window. It's only one machine we've got. So.
Well, that sounds like a great partnership. I usually end every show by asking this question, but actually what I do want to ask you first is, where can people find out about you?
We've tried to kind of be present as much as possible on different platforms. Foremost, our website is confusionofcultures.com. Fairly straightforward. You'll find loads of information there. You can even contact us via there if you need to. Social media, you can find us on Instagram, again, at Confusion of Cultures. Twitter, if you search for Confuse of Culture, unfortunately we don't have enough letters to fill Confusion of Cultures. But again, this is all linked from our website. So if you start there, you'll find all the various social media links.
Perfect.
We're on Pinterest,
And we're on Facebook as well with the
Facebook,
same branding.
Yeah, but
we're everywhere.
Start on the website.
You guys are everywhere. Awesome. That's great. We'll link to all those places too.
Great.
And then, so the question I like to ask everyone is, what was your most meaningful travel experience?
Okay, so I'll go first then if you want. I think yours is a bit more interesting, but
not really.
I think generally, like before traveling this year, I was probably not so outgoing in terms of forming relationships and having these meaningful conversations. And so over the past, where are we now? June, July? Over the past 6 or 7 months, it's definitely been something that I've learned is actually the more you can talk to people, the more you can be in tune with the surrounding life when you're traveling, the more benefit there is for you. The more you'll get out of it. So I definitely would say that's my most meaningful experience.
Yeah, I think I would agree in the sense that this travel experience has been quite meaningful for both of us, hasn't it? Obviously, for different reasons for you. I think for me, I've just found it really liberating. We're just traveling with one backpack and not having sort of worries about belongings, and it's just been quite liberating. But also, this is my first time traveling full time, so it has really enabled me to look inwards and that do self-introspection in a way. So that has been quite revealing in good ways. Also just exploring countries and cultures that I haven't heard such great things about has really made me question how much we read out there truly reflects what really the cultures and the countries are like. And it's been an eye-opener. So it has been a great source, I think, for both of us in relation to writing about culture-related blogs and travel tips. So, the past 6-7 months have been fantastic. Yeah.
Despite lockdown.
Despite lockdown, yes. Despite lockdown.
Yeah, it sounds like you both are making the most of it, and I appreciate what you're saying about so much of our perception of different cultures is presented to us through just like one lens. And I was talking to Jules Road from Travel Jules about that too, and she was saying a similar thing where she went to South Africa and she realized being there that the way it was represented to her was so different than it actually was. And then that led her to go to so many other African countries to sort of see what the real, to create her own truth, I think was how she put it. And that's so valuable for us to get out there and then share those experiences through a different lens than what we're normally, we're just fed a little bit. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to give an example, when we were going to Guatemala, and that was even before we left England, I think some of the people who've never actually been to Guatemala, but they had an opinion about that country, and it's after visiting that country, it's one of my favorite countries in Central America. So one has to actually go out and travel and experience before making an opinion or judging that place. And that's something I'd say we've learned in the last several months.
Yeah, I think a lot of media, especially in the United States, is very fear-based. So then, you get, you just get it through that lens, not necessarily an openness to, well, what are the positive things that are there? And Jason, I appreciate what you're saying too. I am definitely an introvert. So talking to other people hasn't always been super comfortable, but the older I've gotten, the more comfortable it's been. And I see the value in just chit-chatting with someone, waiting for a bus, from another country. It's like it opens up this whole perspective and experience that you wouldn't have gotten if you hadn't have just made small talk with someone, which I'm not really a small talk person. You have to kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone, and it is worth it.
Yeah. Reminds us of me of that trip. We were waiting at a bus stop for about 3 or 4 hours in
Costa Rica.
Because there was literally like 2 buses a day up to Monteverde, and by the time the bus arrived, there were probably 10 people
Yeah.
there, probably from about 7 different countries. And it just makes for such an amazing
it was
conversation, just generally about
absolutely fascinating.
being from Britain. We initially started talking about Brexit, obviously, because that was going on at the time. That's kind of what we talk about generally to other people in Europe. But actually, we learned a lot more about them generally. So it was a really lovely experience, actually. So bus stops are a great place to talk to people.
Right? They are. Is there anything else you guys want listeners to know?
No, I think just generally the message from us would be just to stay positive at the moment. And, you know, if you're an inspiring traveller, really keep planning and keep inspired.
Check out our website.
Yeah, of course, check out our website.
Yes, of course.
And if you like it, do share.
Yeah, please do shout about it, because ultimately we want people to be more interested in culture when they travel. So yeah. I guess lastly, thank you for having us.
Yes,
on your
really
podcast.
enjoyed.
Thank you so much for chatting with me. I have enjoyed getting to know you both over Instagram. And it was just great to like actually speak with you and see your faces. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. This has been a great conversation.
Likewise.
It's been lovely to actually speak to someone.
Yeah.
Apart from each other. Yeah.
Right.
So nice to meet you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And I am crossing my fingers and toes that you make it to the Caribbean, because I want to see what you have to write about there. And, you know, just sounds amazing. So
thank you.
Yeah. Take care, both of you.
Thank you again.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to the Explorer and You podcast. Don't worry, we have a new episode every week. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And don't forget to visit explorerandyou.com for more inspiration and tips. If you want to share the love, you're welcome to send this podcast to others. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.